distinguish between the following: aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration, glycolysis and fermentation, glycolysis and citric acid cycle. So students, let us learn the differences between all these. The first one is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration, it uses oxygen for deriving energy. So in aerobic respiration, the substances, the food is broken down in the presence of oxygen. So oxygen is required. So this takes place in the cytoplasm as well as mitochondria. So the glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm and the remaining Krebs cycle and etc. occurs in the mitochondria. The end product of aerobic respiration are carbon dioxide and water. So the complete glucose will be broken down into carbon dioxide and water. So it is complete oxidation. And here energy will be released in the form of ATP. So totally there will be around 36 to 38 ATP are formed. So the huge amount of energy is released per glucose. So per glucose releases around 36 to 38 ATP. And anaerobic respiration. So here the food is oxidized but in the absence of oxygen. So oxygen is not required over here. So completely in the absence of oxygen, the food will be broken down. So this generally occurs completely in the cytoplasm. The entire reaction of anaerobic respiration takes place in the cytoplasm. The end product formed here is either alcohol, ethyl alcohol or lactic acid. So it can give rise to ethyl alcohol or lactic acid. So here the glucose is not completely oxidized. It is incompletely oxidized and giving rise to ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. Or in case of lactic acid fermentation, it gives rise to lactic acid and carbon dioxide. So there is no complete oxidation of the respiratory substance. So respiratory substance, in both the case it is glucose. In aerobic respiration, glucose is completely oxidized. But in anaerobic respiration, it is incompletely oxidized. The amount of energy released in anaerobic respiration is very less when compared to aerobic respiration. So here only 2 molecules of ATP are produced. Whereas in aerobic respiration, it is around 36 to 38 molecules of ATP will be formed. The next difference is glycolysis and fermentation. So students, glycolysis is a common pathway for both aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So in glycolysis, glucose will be converted to 3-carbon compound, that is pyruvate. A 6-carbon compound will be broken down into 3-carbon compound pyruvate. So each glucose will give rise to 2 pyruvate. So this pathway is common for both aerobic, anaerobic respiration and fermentation. So here the end product of glycolysis will be pyruvic acid, or pyruvate becomes the end product of glycolysis. Whereas fermentation, in fermentation, this is seen only in fermentation or anaerobic respiration. So this stage does not come under aerobic respiration. So it is a part of only anaerobic respiration. So fermentation has got 2 end products. So if it is ethanol fermentation, ethyl alcohol or ethanol is formed. If lactic acid fermentation takes place, then lactic acid is produced. So fermentation is of 2 types. Therefore, end products will be differing based on the type of fermentation. Either it can give rise to ethyl alcohol or it can give rise to lactic acid. So these are the differences between glycolysis and fermentation. So glycolysis and fermentation both takes place in the cytoplasm. Next one, the differences between glycolysis and citric acid cycle. So both glycolysis and citric acid cycle is a part of aerobic respiration. So glycolysis is a linear pathway. So here the glucose will be converted to pyruvate and it is a set of linear reaction. It is not cyclic in nature. And this reaction occurs in the cytoplasm of a cell. So glycolysis is a part of both aerobic and anaerobic. Even though in anaerobic respiration, oxygen doesn't take part, but the first stage of cellular respiration will be glycolysis. So glycolysis is common for both aerobic and anaerobic respiration. The total number of ATP produced during glycolysis is 2 ATP molecules will be produced and it generates 2 NADH2 molecule. So from glucose, totally 4 ATP molecules are formed, but 2 ATP will be used in the preparatory phase. So the net gain will be 2 ATP for glycolysis. Whereas in citric acid cycle, also called as Krebs cycle, so this is a cyclic pathway. So here you can see the cyclic pathway. It occurs in the matrix of mitochondria. So this cycle is seen only in the aerobic respiration. In anaerobic respiration, it is not seen. So during Krebs cycle, the pyruvate which enters into the mitochondria will be completely broken down into carbon dioxide and water. So during this process, 6 NADH2, 2 FADH2 and 2 ATP molecules are formed, releasing 2 acetyl coenzyme A. And since it is cyclic in manner, the process keeps repeating. So these are the differences between aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration, glycolysis and fermentation, glycolysis and citric acid cycle.